You're rolling.
No good. Go away. Okay, so in this video, we're going to talk about how to put a seam together. So all of your patterns, they're going to tell you at some point, obviously, to sew a seam. So what does that mean? What does that look like? So what happens is you have your two pieces of fabric, and this is your right side, like we've talked about. This is your wrong side. So when putting two pieces together to make a seam, we put right sides together. This is very important, right? Because we don't want our seam allowance to be on the outside of our garment or on the outside of a pillow or something like that. Since all of the commercial patterns include seam allowance, no need to draw it on. Just match your two edges together. So we're gonna line these up together. There we go, just kind of generally at this point. So now that they are put together as best as it can be, we got our pins, and so we are gonna cross pin. So we'll take our pin, and remember I talked about going in at an angle. So we'll go in at an angle and we'll put a pin. This is pretty stable fabric. This flannel kind of sticks together like Velcro, so I don't really need a lot of pins. The way I like to pin though, I put a pin here at one corner or one edge, and then I put a pin at the other edge. So then we go in at an angle and we pin. The next thing I do is I put a pin in the middle, like so. And then I will put a pin in between. And so basically, if it's a really long seam, I'll just keep splitting. Like I'll put one here and then here until they're about an inch apart. That's what I'm pretty comfortable with. So there we go. If you have a very slippery fabric like a chiffon, you'd probably need more pins. So it just depends on how movable your fabric is. So now I'm going to pin this side too. I'm going to show you some cool tricks of the trade. So put a pin there starting, put a pin at the end. I find this makes work quicker because you are already securing it straight. So if you were to keep pinning this way, this might sag a little bit. I think this helps it go faster because you're securing it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do this side as well. So I'm going to put a pin on one side, and I'm going to put a pin on the other side. These are not perfectly square. Put a pin in the middle, and then we're going to split. And just so you know, this here is a magnet and it's really helpful to hold your pins because they can get all over the place. Okay, so now it's time to sew. Remember, you keep your threads to the back left side. We are going to put the fabric underneath the presser foot over top of the feed dogs. And the feed dogs are these little bumpy parts right here, and these move and they help push the fabric back. So you will not be, while you're sewing, you just let the machine work. There's no pulling and tugging. The machine will guide the fabric through. Pretty much all you are doing with your hands is to make sure the fabric stays where it needs to be, like stay online, and you're just kind of guiding it through. So what I personally like to do is I like to kind of put my fabric almost at the end of the presser foot when I go to sew, and we are going to use the 5/8 line right here as our guide. So I will put the presser foot down. My fabric's all lined up. I am going to take this pin out because it is right under the needle. So just a word about these pins. So I've said before, like, don't worry about pulling your pins right now. Mainly because when you're first learning to use a machine, you're trying to learn where to put your hands. You're trying to learn what the machine's going to do as you're using it. You're trying to like learn how to use the back stitch or the back tack. You're trying to learn all these things, and adding in pulling out pins is like one thing too many. So that's why I'm saying don't worry about pulling your pins. Like, as you get better and better at sewing, you know, add in pulling out pins once you get comfortable with using the machine. So with that said, I'm going to start sewing. So this hand here, I just keep on this side. It is very lightly on the fabric because the fabric needs to slide under my hand. This hand over here is going to be holding this fabric, and basically I'm going to guide this to make sure it stays on that 5/8 line. So this one's just for stability. This was just for guiding. So first thing you're going to do, actually, let me explain this first. So the reason why I put the fabric all the way back here is because of the hole that the bobbin thread comes out of. If you were to put your fabric right under the needle like this, there's a high likelihood that the needle is going to push your fabric into that hole. Especially when you're first starting a seam. So what I do to avoid that and to give the fabric some more stability, I put it further back. So let's line it up again. Remember, you're going to want to always sew as close to the edge as possible, because if you don't have your seams go all the way to the edge of the fabric, it can actually create like disasters like down the road. If you're making a garment, let's say you might have like a gaping hole because you didn't finish. So go all the way off the edge of the fabric basically. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna push on the pedal. I'm gonna try to go as slow as I can, and just be aware that sometimes when you push on your pedal, it can kind of like burst into speed, but just ease off the pedal, or if it's too much, just take your foot off the pedal and like start over. So I am gonna try to go slow. So I'm taking a few stitches forward, and as you're the very first time you use the machine, or maybe like the first like 20 times, just go ahead and take your foot off of the pedal. Just stop sewing. Then press your reverse or your back stitch or your back tack. You're gonna press and hold. You'll take this hand, and what I end up doing is I kind of move it over a little bit, so it's guiding and is stabilizing, okay? So so you hold it down and you'll push the pedal again, and the fabric is going to come towards you. And this, I go ahead and take as close to the edge as I can. So I don't know if you noticed that, but I only I only went to about right here. I didn't go all the way off, but I got pretty dang close because I didn't want this fabric to get in that hole. A lot of times it's called the machine eating your fabric. Like, you just don't want that. So just stop just shy of the edge. If you want to know like a measurement, probably like 1/8 of an inch or less. All right, so press it back down. So now I took my hand off. I took my foot off. I took my foot off the pedal. I took my hand off of the reverse. And now I'm ready to sew to the edge. So again, you have your hand here for just some stability. This one's guiding. And we're going to try to keep our fabric as close to that 5/8 line as possible. Now what the back stitch does right here, because you're about to go right back over those stitches, is it's going to tangle it, it's going to knot it, and it's going to, your seam is going to hold. If you were to not back stitch, you can pull it apart really easily. And that's not what we want. So anyway, so now I'm going to go all the way to the edge and I'm going to finish this seam. So I'll go right back over those stitches. And again, we are just going to sew right over these pins. We're not going to worry about it. And sometimes you can, so I went here and just kind of like putting the slightest amount of tension on this. Just the babyest amount. I'm not pulling it. I'm not stretching it. I just put some tension on it. This also helps make a clean seam. So as the fabric leaves under my hand, I move it back. Okay, so we have come to the end. I'm going to sew close to the edge, but not quite. I'm going to take my foot off the pedal, push the back stitch, because we all have to do it at the beginning and the end of every seam. And we're going to go back, maybe like, I don't know, 1/2 inch. And now we're going to run right off the fabric, just like that. You want to make sure your arm is in all the way upright position. Lift up your presser foot and pull. So on this Singer Simple, there is a razor back. I think it's on the back side close to the presser foot handle. And what you can do is a thread cutter. So what you can do is just take this guy and cut your threads with a razor. Mine does not have this, so I have to cut with scissors. It is a really good habit to go ahead, turn it around, and we're going to clip the threads that you started with. There's nothing worse than trying to get done with the project and you're over there clipping threads. Just go ahead and get it done right when you're sitting at the sewing table. So that is the seam. And so now that that seam's done, I'm just going to go ahead and pull my pins. And there you go. So I'm going to show you a fun little trick. Pretty much the only thing besides a straight seam that you would need to know using the sewing machine is kind of how to do corners. How to give a nice crisp corner. So you do not have to do back stitching and stuff to do a corner. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to put my fabric a little closer to the corner, line it up, put the presser foot down. So I'm going to start sewing. Take a few stitches forward, take your foot off, push your back stitch or reverse. This hand's going to be doing the guiding and the stabilizing. Let it go back a few stitches. Take your foot off, release, and we are going to go all of the way almost to the edge, but not quite. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So we're just going to go forward. We're still using that line. Now here's the hardest part of corners. You are welcome to draw a 5/8 line somewhere here or a dot to show you where to stop. I don't think I've ever done that. I just guess. So I'm gonna guess it's about right there. All right, so what you're gonna do is when you're at your either 5/8 mark or where you're just guessing, put your needle, so turn the wheel to the right of the machine, all the way down, just all the way down into the fabric, okay? You're gonna lift your presser foot up, just like this, and you're gonna turn your fabric. I can't believe that was dead on. Usually it's either too much or too little. But anyway, that was dead on 5/8. So then, once you've turned your fabric, you're gonna put your presser foot back down, and you're just gonna keep sewing all the way to the end. And again, we're not worrying about these pins. I have just the slightest tension on this. As the fabric moves, I move my hand, my left hand. So we're just guiding it in. We're landing this plane. So as you get to the end, we're going to take our foot off the pedal, push your back stitch. You're going to reverse a little bit, and then you're going to ride off the edge of the fabric. We're going to make sure our arm is all the way up. Just another thing I forgot to say, you should only turn this wheel towards you. You shouldn't be going backwards. That does mess up the machine. Obviously there are times when you have to do that, and it's not a big deal, but if you were to do that a lot, it can mess up the machine. So you should only do it forwards. So to lift the arm up, I'm going to twist the little knob on the side of the machine towards me, lift it all the way up. I'm going to grab this, lift up the presser foot, pull some thread. On this thing, you're simple, you just use the razor, clip it, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to clip these guys. And just so you know, I am clipping it at the fabric. I'm leaving no tails because it was knotted. It's okay if you clip all the way as close as possible to the fabric. All right, so I'm gonna pull my pins. And I'm gonna show you this really nice, pretty corner. I should have done this in a different thread. Yeah, it's a very, very crisp corner. So now I'm going to show you what do you do after you've sewn a seam.